Jessica?
Mm-hmm.
You can sit on that end.
Hey, sorry. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good evening. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And now I hand it over to Commission Chair Carl Richardson.
Good evening, everybody. I think I'd like to start with an introduction. I'm Carl Richardson. I am the acting chair. And to my left,
Felicia Battles Birdsong, community representative.
Hi, hello, I'm Eugene Gloss. I work at Work Inc. and I'm a City of Boston resident.
Kyle Robidoux. I'm on the commission and I live in Roxbury.
Zari Amir Hosseini. I work at Mass General and part of the commission.
and to my right,
Jerry Boyd. I live in West Roxbury, and I'm a new commission member.
And I'm Kristen McCosh, the Disability Commissioner for the city. And I'd like to welcome the new board members here tonight, Jerry, Felicia, and Eugene. So thank you all for attending. And congratulations on your appointment by Mayor Walsh.
and on the phone,
Yes, hi, here's Dusia Lebovskaya. I'm from Boston.
And Ducia is also a new commission member. So congratulations, Ducia.
welcome, everybody. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
Next, we want to have everybody had a chance to read the April minute? And if so, do I hear any motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Ayes have it. April meeting minutes approved. We'll just wait 1 minute and see if we can reconnect the person back onto the phone. Doesn't you?
Welcome to the conference calling center. At any time during this message, please enter your passcode followed by the pound sign. Your passcode has been confirmed. If you need technical assistance during your call, press *0. You are the first caller to this conference. Please wait while others join.
Okay. We'll go ahead, though. And next, I'd like to introduce Jim McQueen from the Public Facility to talk about the City Council Chamber renovation project.
Good afternoon, Commissioner McCosh, board members. I'm Jim McQueen, Senior Project Manager with the Public Facilities Department. I'm here today with members of Feingold Alexander, the architects, Christopher Lane and Mary McCarthy, to present to you the renovations that will be starting shortly on the City Council chamber. Also with us is Maureen Anderson, Senior Project Manager with Public Facilities. The project had several goals. Primarily, we were tasked with improving accessibility in the City Council chamber. To that end, we did meet with the Commissioner and Commission staff to talk about some of the various options and alternatives that were available to us. Additionally, we sought to improve the lighting in the space and the sound systems. Those are the primary targets that we're addressing today. And today we are, just to give you an update on the progress, we've received bids. We are currently under budget. We are in the process of negotiating the contracts, finalizing the paperwork. We have issued a notice to proceed, and work should start within the next week or so. We actually are trying to schedule a pre-construction meeting hopefully by the end of this week, if not beginning of next week. Construction, as I said, will be starting early in July, and we're targeting a substantial completion date towards the end of September, with maybe a few loose ends being tied up after that. But we should be underway shortly. I also wanted to mention another project that we have currently, which is the women's toilet renovation on the first floor. That is currently underway. They've just begun demolition. They'll be doing a little bit of hazardous material abatement this Wednesday, and we're looking to proceed fairly quickly in completing that work within the next 2 to 3 months. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Christopher and Mary and let them really walk you through the design and the scope of work that we're looking at.
Thank you, Jim. I'm Christopher Lane with Feingold Alexander Architects. I'm a senior associate there. I've been with the firm just over 20 years and have been working with PFD on quite a few projects. Most of my work is in adaptive reuse and historic preservation of historic buildings.
Hi, I'm Mary McCarthy. I'll be the project architect on this project. I've been working with Feingold Alexander Architects for just the last year. I've been in the architecture world for 10 years so far, and I'm happy to be part of this project.
So, looking at the project as part of the accessibility, part of that upgrade will also include lighting, AV, as well as finishes and furnishings. The existing building, when looking at the picture on the screen, describes and shows the existing condition where the existing ramp creates a barrier between the public realm, that being the public seating, and the main council floor, where one in the public seating area would need to actually leave the room to get down to the lower level in this case. There's also perimeter stairs. For those of you that have been in the room or space, know that there's stairs that separate the 3 public seating areas from the lower council seating areas. Combined with that, the furnishings that are there and the way they're laid out also create some access issues once down on the council floor area. The existing commission president's desk, the president's desk itself, is also surrounded by stairs on 2 sides that promotes an accessibility issue for someone that needed to be able to be up at that level. Aside from the physical barriers, the audio itself has been an ongoing issue, whether it be the audio intangibility or the existing assisted listening loop or devices that are there. So there's plans to upgrade that as well. And then the lighting will be completely upgraded. So just in brief, looking at the 4 components, as I said, the finishes being upgraded and the furnishings. Finishes will be done as necessary to still be accessible. Low pile carpet, so we don't have any issues with thresholds and thicknesses and thresholds between existing floor and carpet, as well as desks that promote accessibility where we're able to move around the space and get to desks and clear space underneath desks. The amount of architectural renovation that needs to happen within the space, Mary will discuss, but it involves introduction of new handrails, removal of some of the existing concrete walls that are creating barriers, as well as the work previously described at the president's desk.
Thank you, Christopher. This next slide is actually a floor plan showing the existing the existing conditions of the council chamber. It's color coded, so you can see in green, those are the areas that are currently fully accessible. In red stripe is what we call minimally accessible, which is the whole council floor, which is accessible through the ramp, which, as Christopher said, you need to exit the council space and go through the offices so that you can get to that ramp and get down onto the council floor. And so the modifications that we'll be doing, the interventions to make the floor fully accessible, we're removing the temporary ADA ramp, removing the built-up chamber floor, removing a section of the concrete half wall, and removing of a row of seating so that we can create an accessible space. And in this next slide that we show the completed project, and you can see a great majority of the space is 100% accessible as far as mobility access to the space. So what we're doing is, right now, the 18-inch floor, we're going to raise it up to be the same level. The council floor will be the same level as the seating area. So that whole first level of seating will be at the same level as the council floor, will be at the same level as the president's podium. So there will be no height barriers between those areas. Another thing that we're adding is there's an automatic door opener into the space from the lobby, and we're adding an automatic door opener from the office spaces so that any council members who are in need of that assistance are able to get onto the council floor. One intervention that we're doing at the seating areas is adding handrails so that you can get up the stairs more safely into the seating spaces. And then where that half wall of concrete was removed, we're removing that so that we have accessible wheelchair spaces with companion seating next to it, fold-up companion seating, one for each of the 4 wheelchair spaces. And then that allows us to, we're still going to create a separation between the council floor and the seating areas with a railing, and that will be our testimony area right in front of the accessible seating space, as you can see in the south portion of the seating area. So again, this next slide shows the existing conditions. As Christopher said, there's the ramp and the stairs, which create those barriers. And this next slide shows the finished rendering with the new carpet flooring, the low pile, everything at the same level, the new furnishings. There to be curtains installed at the back of the seating areas to help with acoustics. And in the ceiling space, you can see we've removed the existing lighting and installed lighting sensitive with the original design of the building in between the existing beams. So this shows a fully accessible space which meets all of the goals of the project. Now, we'd like to open this up for questions from the commission, and we invite your feedback.
Does anybody on the commission have questions?
I have a question about the podium and the desks.
Sorry, can you use the mic?
Are they height adjustable or no? Are they pretty stationary?
The desks will be stationary. They'll be mounted at 30 inches. At the president's podium, it's stationary, mounted at 34 inches. So it's within the accessible clearances.
Anybody else on the commission? Go ahead.
I didn't see in the video where the wheelchair accessibility will be, where the seats would be. You said there would be 4 with matching seats. I didn't see them here. Are they?
If you want to go back.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I had trouble.
They're going to be. I saw where they're going to be, but I didn't see them in the mock-up.
It would be right in this area here.
So behind the desk that was in the.
That's right.
Okay, so we couldn't see them.
So could you explain that? Because visually I can't see. So where is the wheel? I know what the chamber looks like now because I've been in it. So where's the wheelchair?
Okay, so at the president's desk,
Right.
looking straight across.
Right.
The concrete wall and the counselor desks that are there, we're removing that wall.
Yep. Okay.
And so the desks will still be there. We're removing that wall, putting a new lower railing system that will allow for more clearance behind that railing to the public seating area. We're removing the front row of seats from that public seating area and spreading wheelchair seats across the front of that and companion seating.
Okay.
And the companion seating will fold up. The seats will fold up and fold down. So if it can fit how many wheelchairs across? 8? Is it 8 seats across?
It'll be 4 accessible
wheelchairs, for
spaces.
companion.
So there's 8 seats across, so there'll be 4 wheelchair spaces, and then 4 seats that flip up. So potentially you could have more than 4 wheelchairs.
So,
And they'll also have signs on them, is that correct?
Someone
Yes.
point
Signs
that out
and
on the
either
rendering.
side is where testimony.
Can you go back to the picture of the city council, the new finished one? Yeah. So can you point out where it will be in this, even though you can't see it?
Yeah.
Well, where the back railing is?
Yeah.
Well, we thought that might be asked, so
That's a good shot.
it's tough to see in this because
It's kind of,
it's
if
an older,
you
but
see
it's
that
right here.
bank of seating, it's the same going back that way.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question with regard to that. In order to make the wheelchair seating, you're removing a wall, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Since there was a wall there, my guess is that section was not looped for assistive listening devices. So what are you going to do to make sure the wheelchair section is also looped?
The section that we're removing, so the plug-in for the loop, there's a panel off to the right side. If you're at the public seating area looking at the back of that wall, there's a
Right.
brass panel. And
but-
we're removing internal of that and we'll be making the accommodations to not disturb that loop or refeed that loop. So it'll operate as it does now through an updated AV system with better speakers and microphones.
So you are reseating the loop, is what?
Yes.
And then you'll have the AV system plugged into the mixer, which will go out to, so if a video is even played, which isn't going through the microphone, the person wearing the assistive listening devices will also catch that as well.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And at the 2 lecterns or 2 testimony areas there, they are also mic'd with the same speaker microphone combination that's at all the commission seats as well.
And is the city council area also looped?
It'll operate exactly how it does now. I mean, if I'm understanding the question, we're not changing the way it's currently.
I'm pretty sure that you're going to make sure the audience area is looped.
Yes.
My question is if I ran for city council and I became a counselor and I'm hard of hearing, can I just click a switch on my hearing aid and also benefit as a member of the city council?
I would assume so, yes.
It's something we need to look into right now. We do have drawings that show the existing locations in the seating areas, but we need to do a little bit more work in looking to make sure that the council floor is also looped.
Okay, thank you.
And are you also putting a wall back up for cane detection for people who are blind and use a cane?
So the railing that's there, it has a lower rail that's only about 3 inches off the floor, so that'll function as cane detection as well.
This is great. As someone who used to work in the council, I love seeing particularly the stairs removed. Is this going to require the city council to move to a temporary space? And if so, do you happen to know where they're moving to?
It does require them to move temporarily. I believe they'll be in Faneuil Hall, but I think, Jim, you might know better.
No, part of the reason we're doing it over the course of the summer is their schedule is significantly reduced. They're basically planning to resume in September, so.
Right, so our goal is to get this work complete by the first meeting in September that they have.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just go through the steps of how someone in a wheelchair would testify with this new configuration, what they would do?
So with this being the wheelchair seating and companion seating, the new testimony areas are here.
So can we just start, there's an accessible door to get into the chamber? So, and then there's a,
The accessible door existing now. here. So you would come into the chamber and to the seating area here.
Okay.
And then testimony would be in these two locations.
And is it going to be a table or is it a desk?
It's a
shelf.
countertop shelf off the back of the railing at accessible height.
Right, with a built-in microphone.
Is that next to like a taller stand for people who don't use a mobility device?
No, we're actually,
everybody gonna
it'll
sit?
all be at the lower level. Everybody will stand to testify or in a wheelchair.
So if you're ambulatory, you would sit down to testify?
No,
You just raise the microphone.
Oh, okay.
right.
Okay.
That's great.
Any other questions from anybody?
I would just like to add one comment that this renovation, we're truly appreciative of all the work that property management has done on this particular project, but it's also part of a larger scope of work that Mayor Walsh is committed to in making City Hall accessible, which is the first floor restroom that Jim mentioned earlier, and also the 5th floor bathrooms recently have been brought into ADA compliance. So we're really focusing on the public areas of City Hall. We have a lobby renovation happening on the 3rd floor, which is actually kind of like the 1st floor when you come in off City Hall Plaza. So that's all been made much more accessible with an accessible coffee kiosk and better wayfinding and signage. And then the 5th floor, like once the City Council is upgraded, we'll have bathrooms, signage, and an accessible City Council chamber. And we have more coming in the pipeline. So just expressing my appreciation to Mayor Walsh and to the architects and the building different city agencies that are working with us on all these improvements. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is Jessica, and I'm going to screw up the pronunciation of her name. Jessica Padevka. From, hey, I get a gold star. From the Greater Boston Legal Services, who is a fellow working with Judd King on the MBTA settlement.
Thank you guys very much for having me. So to start off, just to give some context, I have about a 11-minute film that sort of gives the history of the settlement and all the work that this incredible group of 12 individuals has accomplished. So Jorge, do you mind setting that up for me? Just give us a minute so that we can make sure the audio is working.
In 2002, a group of people with disabilities from the Greater Boston area, fed up with the inaccessible, unsafe, and undignified public transit system, filed a class action suit against the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority.
To take me 2 hours virtually every day to get to work because buses wouldn't work, lifts on buses wouldn't work, elevators wouldn't work.
I ride it every, 7 days a week if I have to go somewhere because I don't drive.
I had just had my second accident on the MBTA where the bus driver had opened the doors. I was hardly out the doors when he closed the doors on my hands and literally dragged me about a block.
We will ride 10 years after the settlement.
We're celebrating the 10-year anniversary, but this case started way before. In the early 90s, I began working with a group in the Dorchester-Roxbury neighborhood and Jamaica Plain neighborhood, just representing them on a variety of issues. No matter what the topic was, people wanted to talk about public transportation. People wanted to talk about why it is they couldn't get there.
Albany bus.
Yep. Albany, yeah.
Look it.
Yep, you can.
We said there's got to be a better way to bring this situation to a better life for disabled people.
I would call the bulk of them advocates, community advocates. They knew their rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They knew they had a right to readily accessible, usable, safe public transportation.
The whole issue was making the system better to get from point A to point B without all that obstacles, without fear of falling.
And we filed a lawsuit in 2002. GBLS didn't have any transportation experience. We have a lot of experience litigating against state agencies and government agencies. And it was a hostile relationship. They were really angry that we sued them.
I had very little experience with what it was like for a person with a disability to have to navigate the MBTA. And I think that was true probably of most T employees and management.
When we started with the MBTA, they didn't even want to meet with us. We had people who said at the MBTA, oh, people with disabilities can crawl up the stairs if the elevator isn't working.
Our clients wanted 100% access, and that is what we set out to do.
The judge had asked the plaintiffs and their lawyers, if you got everything you wanted out of the MBTA, what would it be? I asked our lawyers to let me see it. I couldn't find anything in there that I didn't think that they were owed by right of law or just doing the right thing to provide accessibility. My own lawyers said, you should know that they're not asking for any money for the individual plaintiffs or for the members of the class. Whatever they get us to agree to at the MBTA, they just want us to spend the money to fix it so they can use the system.
Accessibility means to me that everyone can ride our system. Everybody's able to use the system, regardless of if they have a disability, they don't have a disability.
Accessibility is the only civil right that actually costs money. And there is always this perception that we can't afford it, so why?
I think once people started to become aware, they realized, well, this system needs to change in a lot of ways.
Instead of an us, them, we, they dialogue, it's us.
What they began to see was the plaintiffs really knew what they were talking about and could be a real help.
The theme of the settlement was to expand accessibility to our system. There was a specific list of items that, as part of the settlement, we were to institute within a period of time. We're pretty far along in getting most of those done. But the theme was to expand accessibility to throughout our system.
When the MBTA had trainings and they were putting out a new bus design, they invited the entire plaintiffs group and Judge King to come and look at these buses. So now, instead of, we are going to give you a plan and show you what we're doing, we are invited into the heart of the MBTA to give our input.
The named plaintiff group has participated in everything from revamping bus rules and train rules for the motor people and drivers to bus training and work with vehicle design and engineering. When I signed the settlement agreement in April of 2000, I signed it saying this is going to tie me to the T for the rest of my life. There's always going to be room for improvement, and I expected and wanted to be a participant in making the improvements that have been made.
My ability to get to Boston and around Boston is much better. The elevators are working. Stations are somewhat more accessible. We have developed an amazing collaborative effort with the MBTA. We have transformed this system by virtue of our collaboration together.
On Friday, I went to Washington, D.C., and I'm extremely unhappy with the metro system. The lighting was terrible. The path of travel was terrible. So it was a pretty bad experience. I'm pretty proud of what we have here.
One big thing that's changed within the organization is that we've got a number of employees with disabilities making decisions often on behalf of people with disabilities, which is something that unfortunately had not been occurring here.
Remember, it was a culture of rude bus drivers, horrible service, people with disabilities didn't matter, and then you see this change to you matter. We're working with you. We see you, we hear you.
One of the big things that have come out of this lawsuit, having an internal advocacy network for people with disabilities so that we can be represented, our needs can be represented to the MBTA.
I conduct every 6 months a public meeting where the plaintiffs, T management all get together. And T management has an opportunity to hear from the plaintiffs and other members of their community with regard to how the T is performing its services.
People have really bought into the importance of this issue, in large part because they've seen what a difference it makes, not only for people with disabilities, but also the general ridership, and also our employees too.
Well, for the past 28 years I've been here at the MBTA, the changes that it's brought about have been absolutely huge. So many of our stops weren't accessible, they're now accessible.
When anyone comes to Massachusetts, when anyone rides the MBTAs, what do they see? You hear audible stop announcements. Do you see the visual monitors telling you when your train or bus is coming? You actually get to know when your elevators are out.
There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we've come light years.
I'm hoping that the T is going to be at the forefront. It's going to be leading the country as far as that's concerned. We really need to be.
The Boston case is now set a national standard, and people do look to it. New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Atlanta. We've been in touch with people everywhere, and they want to learn from our experience.
I think we're so still in the midst of it, but I have no doubt that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, we'll look back and just be blown away.
It's gratifying to be able to participate in the improvements in the system, not just sitting around and watching them happen.
Before it wasn't a priority for total access, and now is. And I'm very proud to be a part of that.
I never thought things would change. And since it changed in my situation, having the trains available, having the buses available, made my life complete.
Well, overall, the investment in the stations and the systems have not only provided access to persons with disabilities, but have provided a better quality and better access to everybody using the system. Our signage is clearer, our stations have better paths of travel, our vehicles are in better condition, and more importantly, we're putting that necessary investment into maintenance to make sure that these facilities stay up and are available most of the time.
We got a ways to go, but we've come a long ways as well. We have a lot more new buses now. They're a lot more accessible.
Yeah, we came a long way.
There's a lot better training with the bus drivers and bus operations and how to deal with people with persons with disabilities.
We're living longer than we have ever lived before. By the time you're age 65, over 50% of folks have a condition that impacts their daily life. Most of the time, it's an invisible condition. So when we actually start talking about civil rights, it's not about me. It's not about Laura or Joanne. It's actually about everyone.
While much progress has been made, the settlement agreement is still in its enforcement stage, and the group continues to work towards 100% accessibility. This film is dedicated to named plaintiff Rogera Robinson. If they strive to foster this understanding, to help those who need assistance, and do what they can to treat disabled passengers with respect, the goal of this settlement will be achieved. This film was made possible by the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, Greater Boston Legal Services, and the Boston Center for Independent Living.
Okay, so as you can see, over the last 10 years, the named plaintiffs have been very engaged with access work and providing feedback to the MBTA to create a much more accessible system than what we had before. And so a couple of years ago, which I can't believe it, I'm saying a couple of years ago, it feels like yesterday, I was hired by Judge King as an intern to sort of look at everything that's going on, what we have in place today, and see what kind of mechanism should be in place to carry on once the settlement has been completed and is wrapped up, to make sure that we don't go back and we continue making such wonderful progress, and the MBTA has the feedback that they need to continue making progress. So what I did was I did a bunch of research. I looked at other cities. I conducted a bunch of individual interviews. I did a survey to the community to find out what was going on. And then what I did was I compared what the plaintiffs have been doing and their structure and setup, and I also looked at the current Access Advisory Group to the MBTA, which is commonly known as ACT, and how they're set up and what they're doing. I started attending regular ACT meetings, and I sort of just compiled everything and compared it together. And I came up with a set of recommendations that I then submitted to Judge King, who later made the recommendation to the MBTA that, you know what, currently what's in place on either side is not enough, and we need to create something completely new so that everyone comes together, because we've had sort of unofficially 3 separate buckets of people that have been advocating. There's ACT, who by default sort of ended up being more paratransit heavy, and then there's the plaintiffs, who are solely focused on fixed route, which is buses and trains. And then we have a bunch of key disability stakeholders who are not engaged in either the plaintiffs group or ACT, but are heavily involved in transportation advocacy. So how do we bring everyone together became the question. And the judge ultimately made the recommendation to the T that we should create an entire new advisory group, and then hired me to create a committee so that we could sort of do that. And that's what we've been working on for the past year. So currently we have now created an advisory committee, and it's been meeting regularly. I lost track of what number meeting we're at now, but pretty much weekly for the last several months. And the advisory committee, the ad hoc committee, it consists of Bill Henning from Boston Center for Independent Living, Carolyn Villers from Mass Senior Action, Jim White, who is the current ACT chair, Lisa Weber, who is the current ACT vice chair, Rick Morin from Bay State Council for the Blind, and then Joanne Daniels-Feingold, who's a named plaintiff, and Andy Foreman, who's a named plaintiff. So I tried to make sure we had equal representation from all of those different buckets. So now I'm going to turn it over to our undergraduate intern, Jorge, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the structure of the group that's been created.
Hello, my name is Jorge Ledesma, and as Jessica mentioned, I will talk to you a little bit about the structure of the community engagement group. When the ad hoc committee first began discussing the structure of the community engagement group, it had 3 priorities in mind. First, it wanted to reach as broad an audience as possible. It wanted to have continuity and engagement, and it wanted to promote diversity in the opinions that were being heard. With that said, the new group has 2 categories of members. There are the general members. The general members are members that renew their membership annually and come from the general public. The second category is the executive board. The executive board consists of 9 executive members, and the breakdown of the board is as follows. There are 5 private citizens who are persons with disabilities and/or seniors from the Boston area, and 4 representatives from community organizations. All of the members of the executive board are selected through a nomination and voting procedure. The executive board will also be in charge of completing an annual work plan. The work plan details priorities and concerns for the MBTA to take into account during the year, and to have in mind as it continues its accessibility projects. As I mentioned, the work plan is completed once every year and then evaluated 6 months after its completion. Finally, the progress of accessibility projects is monitored by the group's facilitator. Now I will turn it back over to Jessica, who will elaborate on what the facilitator is going to do.
If you could wrap it up in the next 5 minutes or so, so we have
really
time
quick.
for questions.
Yep. So the facilitator is going to be a full-time position that I recently found out we do have funding for. Where that person is going to live and how exactly we're going to make the mechanics of that work are all still being decided right now. As everything else is currently being finalized, nothing is set in stone, which is why we're doing these community meetings such as this to gather feedback. Once this group is up and running and has a set of bylaws and a memorandum of understanding with the MBTA will withdraw their current agreement with ACT, and this new group will be in place, but there will not be any gap in representation. So this new group, ACT will not go anywhere until this new group is up and running. But with that said, I'm happy now to answer any of your questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
This new group, it's not up and running yet, but it will replace ACT?
Yes.
And why did, and the thought process behind replacing ACT, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yep, so that kind of goes back to where it was before. The research that I conducted at the beginning just basically showed that a lot of big structural changes would have to be made in order for ACT to sort of carry on any outstanding settlement agreements that are decided upon the MBTA and the plaintiffs group, which they're in discussions right now, finalizing a new agreement that'll carry us forward into the future. So really, in order for this, for the advisory group to be that entity that sort of monitors any outstanding ongoing commitments, it really became necessary, and it was the judge's recommendation to create a whole new group, bring everyone together, as opposed to try and amend an existing group.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's about the monitoring. So the evaluation, so needless to say, Massachusetts has really harsh winters. So when you're doing this evaluation plan, do you evaluate how well it functions during the spring and summer months and then in the winter months? Is there a two-part evaluation, or is it just, because again, winters are rough. So I'm wondering how—
Are you speaking about the annual work plan? Is that?
Yes,
yeah,
and
okay.
how well the things that you have in place are working, and the things that to come, is there evaluation in place for those as well?
So yeah, it's an ongoing, the group will monitor the system all year round. We're very well aware of snow removal and the challenges that come with that, and I know that the Department of System-Wide Accessibility is as well. Ultimately, this new group will be a partnership with System-Wide Accessibility is the goal. That's kind of the way we envision it. So there'll be close communication, so when problems arise, with whatever they are, whatever time of the year, they can work together to address that, and that the public meeting will be a place for individuals in the community to come and, you know, if there's an ongoing problem that has not been addressed through typical complaint procedures, this will be where their voices can be heard.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have an additional question. When do you hope to have the group up and running?
That is the million-dollar question. So my fellowship with Judge King wraps up at the end of August. I do have another fellowship beginning at Greater Boston Legal Services in September, so I'm not really going far. So if our original deadline was by the end of the summer, I think realistically now, just because we want to make sure that we're taking all the proper steps before launching anything, it's looking more like the fall. But I'm pushing to try and get it as completed as possible in the next couple of months.
Great. I have one other question. You mentioned the membership, and this is a fee-paid membership?
No, it's free and open to the public. Any member of the public can join the general membership. The executive board members will be selected through an established voting and nomination procedure, which hasn't quite been finalized yet.
Okay, no, I thought I heard you say fee membership.
Nope, free, open to the public.
Okay.
So How did the executive board get decided again?
So we're still in discussions on that right now, but it's looking like the current proposal is that they'll be nominated by the general membership, and then the executive board will interview them and make.
And then at some point, I'm assuming, you said the facilitator will be a full-time position, so a job.
Yep, a paid
posting
job.
will go online and.
Paid job posting will go online. Like I said, we don't know where that person will be housed yet or how we're going to work the mechanics of that out, but there's money to pay this person for a full-time salary and, you know, benefits, anything that the person needs.
Does the group have a name?
No, that's the other $1 million question. I'm happy to take any suggestions.
If we solve all these questions, do we get the $1 million?
I get paid by legal aid, so probably not.
Any other questions from the commission?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica. We look
Thank you.
forward to seeing the progress that you continue to make. And thank you, Jorge. Next is the interim chair's report. I don't have much to add other than, since we have a new board, I would love to see maybe an updated roster list with all of our contact numbers and phone numbers go out to all of us. Kristen, if you could have your staff
Yep,
do that, so
we will
know
do
how to
that.
keep in touch with each other. The other thing I'd love to see, since we have new blood and new faces, I'd love to see everybody maybe email Kristen and I a list of things you'd like to see the Disability Commission take on during your time here. So maybe the top 3, if you could each come up with your top 3, that would be great. Next is Commissioner McCosh's report.
Thank you very much. So just to second Carl's message that I would like to welcome all the new board members. We're really excited to have you here, excited to hear your ideas, excited that you're already giving input and asking questions. So please continue to do that because we really want you to be the voice of the community. So that's why you're appointed and that's what we need from you. So thank you for that. Just to clarify, you were all sent the bylaws. So if you could read them over. You're all appointed to 3-year terms, mayoral appointment, and attendance is expected at the meeting, so we appreciate that you're giving all your time to the city to help improve accessibility. So I'll give some office updates now about my department. First of all, we have one open position that's posted. The posting has closed. It's for an engagement specialist. We are currently in the process of moving forward to hire that person. We should have more information at the next meeting, we hope. And we'll have one other posting going up shortly for constituent services specialist. Another update we have is on the accessible parking program that my office runs. There'll be some changes to the logistics of the program. The first thing that will be changed will be the actual signage. Right now, I'm assuming that you're all familiar with the signs that you see on city streets. It's currently a white sign with navy blue writing and a navy blue wheelchair symbol. But we're going to change that to a white background. The white background will remain the same, but we're going to change the symbol to a blue box with a white wheelchair in it. It's actually the international symbol of accessibility that you've seen other places. So it will just be a little bit more clear that the ISA is on there, so people will recognize the symbol instantly and know that it's an accessible space. We're also implementing 2 changes to the program, which will be one, that people can request a resident-only language to be put on the sign, which means that in areas where there's resident parking, only residents will be able to park in those accessible spaces. That won't be every space, that will just be by request. And the second change is that we're going to designate some signs as wheelchair, van, or lift. Lift or ramp vehicle only. So those will be ones you've seen in the parking lot. There'll also be a few of those on the city streets. And they will be by request only for someone who uses a wheelchair can request it, and they'll be few and far between. And then those changes will be happening over the summer. Did you have a question?
Yeah, with regard to the accessible parking program, do you guys have like a master list somewhere of all the spots in the city?
We do. And that will be the main responsibility of our position that we're going to be posting in the next month or so, the constituent services specialist. That person runs the whole parking program along with other programs in the office. Right. So right now we're slightly backed up on the installation and review of the spaces because that position's been vacant for over a year. So Jessica, the chief of staff, is mainly doing it with some administrative help from the rest of the staff. But we're looking forward to hiring that person so we can get back up to speed. Other than that, I wanted to let people know that we had a meeting last week in my office to talk about a disability history project. One thing that I was interested in doing for the city is to create a disability history tour of Boston. My idea was to sort of have like a story map. It could be a self-guided tour of all the different places and people who have contributed to disability history in Boston. There were a number of institutions and people fought for accessibility and inclusion at the State House. So just a way to tell those stories and let people experience disability history to make it more well-known to people who aren't familiar with it. And then other people had an idea about creating a disability history consortium of Boston or New England, because there's so much history in the Boston area and New England of disability progress. Martha's Vineyard is a prime example of sign language where that evolved and was spoken fluently by most all residents who lived there at a time. Also, we've had the first or early schools for people who are blind, people who are deaf, a lot of organizing around independent living, the second independent living center in the country. So there's a lot of disability history here that we want to promote. So that's in progress now. And I know Carl was in attendance at the meeting and a number of other disability advocates and service providers. We're looking to have a bigger meeting to get input from the community at large in the fall. So I'll keep you updated on that. And then other events that we have coming up are ADA Day on July 25th. That'll be from 12 to 2 on City Hall Plaza. We'd love it if board members could attend and help us with the event, introduce yourselves to the community, and just casually find out what people are interested in. I hope that you can do a lot of listening in your new roles and then bring your ideas to me and your feedback. We also have summer internship program starting after July 4th. That's in collaboration with the Mass Rehab Commission. We do an internship program every year for 10 adults with disabilities who are Boston residents, who are job ready and looking for experience and to gain some confidence. So we place them in different city offices, and they work for 6 weeks, paid as on-the-job training by Mass Rehab. So we'll be beginning that July 10th, and it ends August 18th. Also, the Health and Human Services Cabinet puts on a series of summer block parties in the neighborhoods. We can send you out a list of those dates, and it's also online on the city website. We have our civic engagement event in the fall. That's an event that will help people with disabilities in the city engage in local government. They can come to City Hall, meet their city councilor, see the accessibility improvements, and just basically learn how they can get involved. Hopefully they'll be able to see the new and improved council chamber if the work is done by then. And this is a big year for civic engagement because it's a mayoral election and we have city council elections, so we're really hoping to get the word out and get the vote out from people with disabilities. And then the last event that I want to mention is the Abilities Expo. That happens every September, and it will be the second weekend in September, the weekend after Labor Day this year. It's at the Convention Center on Summer Street in Boston, and it's a free event open to all members of the disability community, people who have disabilities, people who are interested in disabilities, service providers. They have anything and everything you want to know about disability, so it's a great event. And that's all I have, but I'm happy to take questions on anything that I mentioned if anybody has questions.
Commissioner, do you have any idea, a rough idea about how many accessible parking spaces there are in the city? Is the city up to compliance with the number of spaces, information like that?
Yes, so there is no law that mandates on-street parking for accessibility. It's not covered under the ADA, it's not covered under the AAB, it's not even really covered by a city ordinance at this point. But the way it is covered legally is probably under ADA Title II, which is the requirement that local government provide access to services to people with disabilities the same as it does to the general public. So where we provide parking to the general public, we should also be looking to provide parking for people with disabilities.
Sure.
So we roughly have about 3,000 on-street spaces in residential neighborhoods and 500 in downtown and business districts.
I have a question, Commissioner. On the civic engagement, the event that's happening, I'm sorry, could you just say a little bit more about that? That's just for community residents to come in and talk with, just to see the facility? Is anything major going on with that as well?
Yes, we did our first event last year. It was held on a weekday in September. So we had maps of City Hall pointing out different accessibility upgrades. People could see the City Council chamber because we had already made some upgrades at that point. We have installed a large screen TV with captions, so anybody who is deaf can attend the meetings and read along with the discussions that are happening in real time. We also had improved the ramp. Before, the ramp to go down to testify was non-compliant. We put in a compliant ramp with an acceptable grade, slope, and compliant handrails. And we've been working just in general to upgrade the chamber with an electronic door opener and other access improvements. So we showed people that. We also showed the new government center T station, which opened last summer. So that's a direct line to get to City Hall. And there's a compliant path of travel from the train station to City Hall, which is a huge improvement because for years people had to traverse over the rough bricks that were cracked and crumbling and missing. So now we have a smooth granite path that leads into an asphalt path right to the ramp that leads into City Hall.
Wonderful.
So along with the accessibility upgrades, we also had people have a chance to meet their city councilors or the city councilor staff to register to vote. We had the Elections Commission set up a mock voting booth, so people who had never voted before or were nervous about voting could try out voting, and also try the AutoMark machine, which is a device that helps people with physical disabilities and also people who are blind be able to vote independently. So we just had a lot of different things that people could check out. And really, it was just to encourage them to break down the barriers that exist when people think about participating in government. So we'd love to get we had a good turnout. We had about 100 people come, but we'd love to get out a bigger turnout and really reach the people that we don't reach, people who are afraid of government, people who don't know about us. So that's why we're really hoping that you can come in and talk to people in your communities that you know who don't know about us and encourage them to come to these events.
You've done great work.
Commissioner, since the last meeting, I believe there was an update with regard to the Beacon Hill sidewalk. Can you let us know about that?
Yes, so the City of Boston was successful in keeping the accessibility program on track, which is making the curb ramps in Beacon Hill composed of concrete with a red tactile warning pad. The Beacon Hill Civic Association had put an injunction in with the Massachusetts State Court to stop the work, but the judge recently ruled that we can continue with the work, that there was no basis for the injunction. However, the Beacon Hill Civic Association appealed that ruling, so we are now in the process of working on defending their appeal. So work is not happening yet, but we feel confident it will happen soon.
Okay, great. Just so the rest of the board, the rest of the commission knows that this has been about a 3-year battle. It's been in the court, and it's good news and good progress. So thank you. And hopefully we'll learn more moving forward.
Yep, as soon as we have the green light, I will be sure to make an announcement, and I'm sure the city will as well.
Commissioner, I have a question about the ADA Day. I understand every year you do it at the City Hall. Have you ever considered doing it anywhere else that might be a little bit more scenic or?
Well, there have been a lot of improvements in City Hall Plaza. We have installations there on a weekly basis. And it's much nicer now. There's a lot of greenery, there are tables, we have shaded areas. So we actually want to promote City Hall Plaza, and it's really a day to thank the mayor of Boston for all his work and commitment, that we really want to have it in his backyard. So we did celebrate the 25th anniversary at the Boston Common. which can accommodate more people. So that was a fun day. But as far as our celebration, I think we're going to keep it here on City Hall Plaza. And hopefully there'll be more improvements to come, even nicer than is out there now.
Any other questions for the commissioner?
I just had an additional question, Commissioner. Any updates in terms of the accessible taxi or the Uber or Lyft partnerships with the T or anything?
So I don't have any specific updates other than to say it's a work in progress. It's ongoing. The city wave cabs, there are 100 of them, and so an update on that is 5 years ago when we started working with the city police department, the Boston Police Department Hackney Division, we had one accessible cab out of the 100, and 99 were non-compliant, and right now we're up to about 50. So it's a huge change in 5 years. They recently had their spring inspections. All the cabs are inspected twice a year in the spring and fall. So I have to contact the Hackney captain to see what the latest numbers are. And once I have that, I'll get the word out to everybody. As far as Uber is concerned, that's still a work in progress. And I know there are a few other groups that are working on it, BCIL, Disability Policy Consortium, and Spalding have an agreement to work with Uber. And John Winsky, who's on the board but not here tonight, I know he's working on that, and he may have some updates for us soon. And then one other project that I wanted to mention that we're working on this summer is an accessibility priority survey. We have a fellow from the Rappaport Center at Harvard University who's developing the survey tool for us, and it's going to be a way for us to reach out to the community to see what issues they want us to work on. It's really complex trying to develop the survey, so we're hoping that the fellow, her name is Leah, we're hoping that Leah can complete her work on developing the survey tool before she leaves, and then hopefully we can roll out information at ADA Day and then implement the survey in the fall. And then the new constituent engagement specialist that we hire will be able to take the survey results, whether people say they want us to focus on parking or civic engagement or other specific things, and we can work around programs that will help meet the people's priorities who live or work or visit the city. It doesn't just have to be Boston residents who take the priority survey, because we know all kinds of people with disabilities come to Boston, not just residents. So we're excited about that project, and that will be kicking off at ADA Day.
Commissioner, I have a question. For the survey, will we be privy to see that before it rolls out?
Yes, that's a great idea. We will bring it to you by the next meeting.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, the next meeting is going to be, that's a good point. We're moving the date of the next meeting. Instead of the 4th Thursday, it's going to be the 3rd Thursday, because ADA Day is the Tuesday of that week. So we want you all to be able to be rested, so you'll come to both events, the meeting and ADA Day. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Great. Any more questions for the commissioner? Okay, next is the architectural access report with Sarah Loon.
Hello, Commission. I would like to share a few projects our office has been working on in several neighborhoods. In downtown, we recently worked with Meg Robinson from the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind on a constituent complaint on Boylston Street and I believe Tremont Street near Emerson College. So we worked with the college to replace the sidewalk with cement concrete instead of the standard brick concrete that they were redoing the alley with. We're currently in talks with both the developer, the designer, as well as the Boston Landmarks Commission to see if we can bring accessibility to the private alley, which they were redoing. In the West End, we worked with the designers of 50 Standiford Street to give recommendations to their sidewalk improvements, as well as their passenger drop-off and loading areas. It currently houses medical offices and is a popular destination for users of the ride. So we want to make sure that when people get dropped off at this location, they are able to get into the building. In Charlestown, we have been working with the Wynn Casino to bring sidewalk improvements to the Alfred Street connection that goes from the Boston to the Everett line. So that's on the other side of the bridge. We have asked them to provide cast-in-place concrete sidewalks instead of pavers in the pedestrian right-of-way, and they will be providing 10 feet of cement. As a citywide initiative, our staff recently met with the Inspectional Services Department leadership to further discuss opportunities on how to make and ensure Boston buildings are accessible and enforcement. And we now have access to their internal database called Hanson, and we're currently being trained on how to use this technology to better increase workflow between our departments, as well as the Transportation Department, as well as the Public Works Department. And that concludes my presentation.
I have a question, Chairman. When you say you're involved with inspectional services, the work, increase the workflow, are you talking about how they put in an order and how it's completed, or each department, the management of it? I need more clarity on that.
Sure. Usually when we receive a complaint, we would forward it to the the Inspectional Services Department to gather information about the type of work being done, the type of building it is, what use it is, and the construction costs to determine triggers for specific state building codes, which includes accessibility. But now that we have access to the system, we can do that legwork ourselves, which saves everybody time, as well as gives more specific information without having to go through the third party.
You're doing that now?
Yes.
And so things have worked out. Has it increased on the good side?
We only recently gained access to Hanson, so we haven't used it for a very long time, probably for a week or two.
Okay.
So we look forward to using it when the situation arises.
Okay.
And just to add some context to Sarah's report for the new board members, our staff consists of 2 architects. Patricia Mendez, who is on vacation, she typically gives the report. She's our architectural access specialist. And Sarah recently graduated from architectural school just a few weeks ago. So Sarah is our architectural access coordinator. So Sarah and Patricia work very closely together to review accessibility in Boston. And what their main work consists of is reviewing all the projects that come through the BDPA, which is the former BRA. So every large development or institutional master plan, which is hospitals, universities, new housing developments, the big towers that you see downtown, they review every single project, which is hundreds per year. And we're also hoping that they will work closely with the board moving forward so that you can review the accessibility elements in these projects to make sure that you feel like they're compliant, not technically compliant, because that's what Sarah and Patricia would do, but that you feel that they meet the needs of the community. So in addition to the big developments, they also review any work that's being done on the public sidewalks for materials and compliance with slope and width. And those are a few of the projects that Sarah mentioned, like with Wynn Casino, to be sure that they have a wide enough path of travel and then it's made of cement concrete. So they do buildings, they do sidewalks, they also work on intersections for audio pedestrian signals and striping and slopes and everything else that needs to happen to make it.
And variance request.
Yep, variance requests at the Architectural Access Board. And the complaints that we typically get that we work with inspectional services on will be something like somebody says, there's a lift at Dunkin' Donuts to get up the stairs, which is not working. So typically we would have to call inspectional or email inspectional services, wait for them to get back to us, wait to see if they inspect it and find out the results and then get back to the constituent. But now Sarah and Patricia can go right into the system directly, see what the status is, if ISD is aware of it, if they've checked it out, and we'll just hopefully streamline the process so we can get right back to residents more quickly. So we do a lot of work on architectural access. Sarah and Patricia have a very heavy workload, and we're hoping to get a lot of input from the board moving forward.
Any other questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah, and congratulations on graduating from school.
Thank you.
Next is old action items. I can't recall if we have any pending old action items. I don't know if the commissioner's office has anything that they're expecting from the commission right now.
I believe we do not have any.
Okay, good. Do we have any new action items that the commission would like to bring up? Members of the commission? Well, I know we've all had to learn a lot tonight, so.
Actually, I'd like to put one new action item on the agenda, and that would be for, to propose that elections be held in September.
I was gonna bring that up if you didn't. So, when would you like to host the election?
September or October, we'll see how.
Yeah, let's all get
what
to
point
know
we're
each
at.
other first, and then we'll go from there.
You said September or October?
September or October.
Great. So if anybody wants to be the chair, vice chair, secretary?
Or treasurer.
Treasurer is a little bit, it's interesting. We do have a treasurer in the bylaws, but it doesn't mean you get to run a budget or anything. It's more of a name position only. So, okay, great. So why don't we go ahead and, do you want to just pick the month now so that we can, the month before we can do the nomination?
Yeah, why don't we do October?
Okay, so that means if we're going to do October, we should have nominations in mind for September. So
Yes.
that, or at least, we'll come up with a strategy in September for the October election.
Yes, that sounds good.
Next, if there are no more new action items, next we'd like to hear from any members of the public if anybody wishes to speak. If so, please make your way up to the podium and announce yourself. Is there, I can't tell, is there anyone?
I think we're good.
What was that?
There's no one.
No one.
Okay, great. Do I hear any motions to adjourn?
At first,
Any second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes carry it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for a great first meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.